Awesome. All right. Well, welcome to today's training. Today, we are going to be going over the full implementation plan. So if you remember our last training, which was in the beginning of September, that month flew by, even saying that. We talked about finalizing your theory of action and kind of introduced that implementation plan, only looking at those first two tabs that had the theory of action and the measurement plan. Today, we're going to be going over the full implementation plan. So we do have quite a bit to cover, but I think this will give you all a really good overview of how to begin to approach the implementation plan. Just as a reminder, the implementation plan isn't just like a 1-month deliverable. This is kind of like the final big milestone deliverable that you'll deliver in December. So we have a long runway so that we have time to draft, collect feedback from stakeholders, and really for you all to feel good about this product and that it's not just kind of pushed together really quickly. So we have a lot of time for it. Today, really the full session is focusing on providing you an overview of each of those tabs. So it's organized in that we go over what is included on each tab, as well as how to navigate each tab. As always, we have the note catcher, and Latanya is going to add that to the chat. That also has the link to the implementation plan, the slide deck, the information hub, and then the exit ticket as well. And so as I kind of mentioned, today's objectives are first to really understand the purpose of the implementation plan and how it supports successful project execution. Also going over like what it means for the teacher time study. Obviously, we have all made implementation plans. They all look a little bit different. Latanya and Sarah worked really hard to kind of take from all of the different plans that they've done, what they found successful, what didn't work, and made this really awesome plan that is really taking all of the best practices that we've learned. Number 2 is navigating the 7 sections of the implementation plan, which again are those tabs. We've already covered 2 of them, so we have 2 out of the 5 done, but we're going to cover the remainder. Then we're going to have you practice applying the template by drafting examples in those different tabs. And then lastly, we want you to be able to identify next steps for completing and maintaining your own district implementation plan. So first, we're going to jump in and go over an introduction and overview of the implementation plan, starting with a reflection of what it is, and then getting into what we already covered. So again, as I mentioned, everyone has had experience with some sort of implementation plan, some sort of project plan. At a high level, it's really just a detailed document that's outlining how to execute a strategy. So it includes the tasks that are required to be completed, resources that are needed, timelines, and who's responsible for what. We know it's really important, especially when executing a systems level strategy, to make sure everyone's on the same page. You've done all of this work in doing the needs assessment to say, here's what our needs are. You did your theory of action to identify the gaps and say, here's the strategy we want to execute. And now with the implementation plan, it's really bridging the gap and saying like, here's the needs, here's the strategy we're going to implement, here's how we're going to do the work. It's also thinking about not only how you're going to do the work, but how you're going to measure your progress and make sure you have those check-in points. I think a lot of times implementation plans are missing that of how do you know what you're doing is working, whether you're doing it with fidelity, and what changes need to be made. So it's being really, really detailed and saying, this is when we're going to be reviewing certain pieces. The whole implementation plan helps minimize risks, optimizes resources, and it really establishes shared accountability. So especially when you're talking about the stakeholders and who is involved and responsible for what, having it all documented in one spot shares that accountability piece. So an overview of our implementation plan. Again, we shared it last week as like a quick introduction. But looking at it here, our implementation plan includes these 7 different tabs. They're listed here, as well as this is in the implementation plan, how to click through them. So first is that theory of action. We really wanted to bring in your work from that phase 2 to say, here's your strategy. Here's why you think it's going to work. The remainder of the tabs get into how you're going to put that strategy in place. The next tab is measure to learn. So your measurement plan of how do you know, or how are you going to be able to monitor progress and know what you're doing is impactful. The third is your stakeholder engagement plan, identifying who you're going to engage in the process, how you're going to keep them informed, and what either barriers you anticipate in including them or different assets they'll bring to the process. Your change management plan, your communication plan. So I'm thinking about it in terms of how are you going to roll this out, knowing that you have sometimes campus specific as well as district wide strategies. So really thinking strategically about your communication of this work, who is owning each work stream, and then the overall project plan. So again, it's really broken down to include all these different specific topics. So I'm going to again go briefly over what work we previously did, because that was a month ago. I know that you all met and this should still be kind of fresh on your mind, but just so we remember what we discussed. The first tab in the implementation plan is the theory of action tab. So this is where you have the theory of action visual that was presented up top. And this is where you you had your more narrative, longer theory of action. This was just a high level if we then, which leads to summary, to make sure that you just kind of have your implementation plan grounded and rooted in the shared interpretation of why you're doing what you're doing. So again, this is just a high level summary of it. Sandra?
Okay, I got to get my cursor to catch up with me. So on the theory of action, this is a small thing, but it's driving me crazy. It doesn't wrap. Like when I'm typing in the if we then, which leads to, it doesn't wrap, and I can't get it to wrap.
Got it. I can.
Look, here's the wrap text up there.
Yeah, do the wrap text.
I made. This is the one that there's no wrap text on this one.
Oh, I see.
So I think she has to do it because it's.
I'm going to go to it really quick. Okay, I just changed the template.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure. Cool, there we go. Yep, now it's wrapping. I hate that because then you can't see everything and it makes everything overlap and you can't see it. So there we go. Problem fixed. Awesome. So once you have that completed, the bottom tab is where you are really only looking at and entering your key strategies in column B. So there's these 3 different paths that you could be taking as a district. You could be doing 1, 2, or 3. There's path A, which is a district-led change for school year 26-27. Path B, which is a systems change through a LASSO grant. And then optional path C, which is a right now district or campus change. So examples of these are like a high school master reschedule, applying for ADSE, and then a fall PLC reboot. So you can see they're just the different levels and different granules of those strategies. You want to enter them in row B because these are going to copy over to the remainder of your tabs and help you make sure that you are planning for each of those strategies. Tab 2 is our measurement plan. Again, this is where you're going into more detail on how you are going to be determining whether you are doing what you plan to do, as well as whether what you're doing is effective or not. So again, like I mentioned in that first tab, when you enter those strategies, they pop up as options in the drop-down for you to select. So you'll just want to make sure that you have a measurement plan for each of your strategies. For the measurement plan, you include the outcome, of what will be different for the teachers or students, the data source that will include the data that you need. That could be a data source that already exists or something that you plan to create, specific measures or data variables. So if it was a survey as a data source, I would include the specific survey question or questions that you want to pull from, and then the level of data. So you're going to look at it by, like, again, using the survey example, by individual respondent, by grade, by subject area, by campus, or overall district. So being able to lay out how you're going to be measuring. This is just the example, again, that we prepared and presented last time. Going over the redesign the master schedule and staffing model as the strategy. The outcome being that, again, this is a quick hit. So this was the option C. By October 2025, 100% of campuses will implement revised master schedules with a minimum of 240 uninterrupted planning minutes per week. The data source is just the submitted master schedule. The actual specific data variable is whether they've allocated the planning time within their master schedule. So it's just like looking at that, whether they have that time allocated. And the level of detail is looking at it at the campus level, because again, we want 100% of campuses there. The next one is redesigning the master schedule and staffing model. So this outcome is that by June 2026, 90% of teachers report at least 4 hours of planning time. So this data source that we would pull from is a teacher survey. The specific question was the percent of teachers reporting at least 4 hours of planning time. And for this, we want to look at both the grade and campus level. So I know after our previous training, and we did have our coaching check-ins, our ask of you was to finalize your theory of action, put that into your implementation plan, and then begin kind of thinking about your measurement plan. We want to spend some time now to have each district DQIT lead share out one strategy and a measure that you identified for tracking progress. Share why you chose the particular measure or are thinking about it. It doesn't have to be finalized. And then share how the measure will inform decision-making.
Okay, so we chose the fall PLC reboots, and okay, my copy isn't wrapping yet. I have to change it over to your new one.
Yeah.
PLC.
Read up at the top.
Yeah. PLCs will follow a district-wide framework with clear agendas, norms, and expectations, so teachers know exactly how the time will be used. And then for the data source, we're using PLC observation protocols and walkthroughs. We're working on a walkthrough form and right now. And then for the specific measure, we're working on a survey, retention and HR data, teacher survey, pulse checks, scheduling data, master schedule, and coverage logs. And then the level of detail we put district wide and campus, and look for campus by campus retention differences, connections between survey feedback on PLC and HR retention data, and help isolate whether burnout reduction and satisfaction goals are met. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think it'll be easier to see it like written out, but it sounds good. I just making sure that everything is, I think the biggest thing with measurement plans is making sure that you're measuring all of your outcomes, but not being overly zealous in your measures as well, like knowing what you need and what you don't need. So I think we can make sure when we actually review it that you have, it sounds like you have enough measures, but I just want to make sure you're not trying and planning to do too much where then it just doesn't happen. But it sounds great, and all of those sound like great measures. Ladle?
I'll share out our second one. We're going to be providing leader training and tools to facilitate PLCs that focus on analyzing student work, aligning instruction, and sharing best practices. And so our outcome for that, we did an outcome for teachers and an outcome for students. Because for teachers, the PLC will be focused, productive, and give teachers the tools and support they need. But for students, it should also mean that they get high quality instruction and targeted supports and increase their success. So our data sources will be a teacher survey that's still to be determined, teacher and leader training in PLCs. We're coming up with a PLC rubric, kind of like a checklist that they're going to be using. Obviously, our PLC agendas will be an artifact for us. And then we're looking at STAR Meet and Masters growth for students. And it actually is aligned with our performance objectives in our CIPs, so that everything is kind of aligned. And so our data measurable, like how we're going to, really track our progress, is we use Eduphoria. So we're going to be using that, like 100% of our teachers and leaders are trained, and that's indicated in Strive. 70 to 85% of our PLC rubric checklist will show kind of that piece of like these things are really happening in PLC. That teacher survey that we still need to create, and then our goal is to have 2% growth in meets and masters for our kiddos. So it's going to affect our campus, our grade level content area, and our student data. So that's kind of what we have planned for PLCs. And then we have 2 other ones as well, but they all are kind of aligned. And Siobhan and Debbie, you guys can chime in if I left something off. So.
No, awesome. That sounds great as well. Any thoughts or feedback, Latanya or Deborah, on either of those kind of drafted measurement plans?
No, that does sound great. I was trying to find them in the folders, but I couldn't find them in there yet. So if you want to put them in your phase 3 folders, and then we can help follow along, like within the next coaching calls and things like that, you can do that so we can help and see.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think a reason that we wanted to do the measurement plan discussion kind of upfront before the remaining implementation plan was, again, to make sure that measurement was and progress monitoring was a topic that was front of mind. Again, we don't want it to be just an afterthought of, we created our implementation plan. Oh, wait, how are we going to know what we're doing? So I wanted to make sure that we had this up front so that all of these processes can be included within our implementation plan. So it's not just how you're doing the strategy, it's also how you're measuring the strategy. All right, the third tab in the implementation plan is the stakeholder plan. And this is identifying any stakeholders who should be involved or will have some impact on each of the strategies. So it's really important to recognize who influences and who is impacted by this change. It also helps build alignment and support. So for each strategy, again, when you list them on your first theory of action page, they copy down. So for each strategy, we want you to identify each stakeholder group. For each of them, it will most likely be more than one, to be engaged, and then document what considerations should be made as you prepare the rollout of the implementation plan and the strategy. So any potential barriers that could be facing, anything that they would be able to help with, anything that they could, like, thinking about like potential roadblocks of, oh, they would be able to help this. Like if you're thinking about specific campus level rollout, being able to leverage the principal or maybe the dean, or thinking about just different stakeholders that you can engage throughout the process. So again, we expect that you will have at least one stakeholder group for each strategy. I would expect probably multiple, because you really want to be thinking through how you can leverage each of these groups.
Okay, I'm up. So the fourth tab is manage change. the purpose of the Manage Change or Change Management tab is to assess the readiness of change throughout the district and the community. And so this is critical before you implement a big change. You want to be able to assess how ready your district and or your community, how ready they are for change to happen. And so this tab is really thinking that process out. And so you'll see at the top, there are what we call 5 C's, and these are the 5 conditions for change. And so at the top, you will use the 5 conditions to evaluate and strengthen readiness of the district. And so conviction, and I'm going to read these through, and you can pause me if you have any questions. So the first C is conviction. And so it means, do leaders and staff believe the strategy is worth doing? Clarity, can leaders and staff clearly describe what will change and why? Capacity, do they have the skills, knowledge, and resources needed? Coalition, is there a strong base of advocates and supporters? And culture, is the organizational and organization, yeah, that's the right word, organizational environment supportive of innovation and improvement. And so what you'll do is you'll take the strategy, enter your strategy here. So you'll take your strategy, and then you will determine what level of change is already present. So it may be more than one. So you will select those. And then after you select the conditions that are already present, then you will analyze the success and possible failures of this change. So the analysis is, what is the past successful change? Have you tried to implement change before? When and why? How similar was the change? How successful was it? And then you think about the barriers and the resistance for change. So you think about, how was change implemented? What were the barriers in place? Why was it successful? Why was it not successful? And so you'll think about the barriers, resistance, and then the success of the previous change. And then from there, you'll make a plan for addressing barriers and budget considerations. So you always want to think about the budget, what you have access to, what you don't have access to, what you can do reasonably within the budget. So you'll take action. So you'll think about what is needed for this change to happen, and then you'll think about the budget implications. Are there budget considerations for the district that need to be considered? Is a grant in place? Does the grant have guidelines and restrictions and all of those things? So you want to think that through for each strategy that you enter. And so that is the Manage Change tab. Are there any questions on that? Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute, not a 10-minute break, but you're going to go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes with your teams. And you're going to do 2 things. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to identify stakeholders. In the stakeholders tab, you're going to identify 2 to 3 stakeholders. It can be more, but remember, you only have 10 minutes to do 2 things. And identify any resistance that might emerge with the groups and how they will be included in the strategy. So think through at least 2 to 3 stakeholders for the identifying stakeholders group. And then in the Manage Change tab, identify 1 key strategy and fill in that role for that key strategy. Any questions? Okay, we're going to send y'all into breakout rooms. And we will come back at, let's do 9:37.
Barbara, you are with Temple, correct? Put you in that room.
Yeah, sorry, I hopped in late.
No problem. And Deborah, are you with
I'm with
Temple?
Lytle.
Okay, Lytle. There we go.
Please. Okay, well, no, we're not all back. We're not all back. Okay, we should all be back now. Okay. So love to hear from your groups. We want to hear stakeholders that you listed on your stakeholders tab. And then one thing that you want to lift up from your manage change tab, a barrier that you identified or something that came up while you were discussing the manage change tab. So we want to hear from both groups, stakeholders, and then lift up something from your manage change tab.
I'll go. I don't mind starting.
Go ahead, Siobhan.
Alrighty, so when Dr. Tate and I were speaking about the identify stakeholders, we were ensured to include each campus. And we discussed it's going to be campus, and then across that would be grade level stakeholders as well that cover each grade, which would include teachers, our administration, and then our academic coaches, and then have those teacher researchers as that consultant piece as well. As we moved into if there would be any resistance from this group, we kind of determined that explaining the why coming out of the results of their teacher time study data, we really don't anticipate much resistance because we did gather the information from what our teachers supplied us with. And so we know that our teacher researchers are going to be that consultant piece that are going to support through this implementation plan.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Do you want me to move into the managed change?
Yeah,
Okay.
lift up a barrier. You don't have to talk through the whole thing. Just maybe lift up a barrier that was identified while you were discussing or something like that.
Okay. Well, really on that barrier side, with Dr. Tate and I, we both kind of came on about the same time. I think maybe I was here 1 year previous to her. But what we really kind of think came to the surface was that the accountability piece may have been lacking and just the different expectations, since within our district, we have so many people that have been at Lytle and Lytle only. And there's a sprinkle of us that have come from different districts to experience other trainings. And so with that, we just kind of, I don't want to say assume, but we've kind of seen that not everyone has been able to see what the cycle of the whole process is. And putting that in place will help us ensure that there's follow through along with the implementation piece, and then just holding people accountable, and then just kind of keeping that going to help from those, remove us out of those barriers.
Thank you very much. That sounds great.
Yes, ma'am.
Temple team.
So actually, I really like what Lytle did. So I put to student teachers and principals, and we kind of focused on the teacher part of it. But I like kind of breaking it up with teachers and ICs and principal. I like breaking that part up a little bit more. So we'll discuss if we want to do that. And so we kind of got stuck on the resistance with the teacher part. But I think one thing that really stood out in our conversation was the change in scheduling, because people don't like change. And like, for instance, what we've already done is made a change in maybe the time of the PLC, which threw the teachers off. But now they seem to be adjusting. So that's kind of what we did with the change, was it's the change in the scheduling and what we're allowing during PLCs. That's a shift for the administrators, because they want to complete things in PLCs, and we're telling them they can't.
Yeah.
So that's the big shift for us. And that's kind of where that's really all we got done.
Yeah, thank you. 10 minutes is not a lot of time. So thank you for that. Okay, we're going to move forward because we want to make sure that we cover all of the key tabs for today. So the next tab is the communicate tab. And the purpose of the communicate communicate tab or communication tab is to build a clear communication plan aligned with your strategy. So you'll notice that all of these tabs are going to start feeding into each other and makes it a lot easier to fill out the entire plan. So the idea for this tab is to think about, for each strategy, you're going to outline the message, you're going to think about the audience, the timing, the channel, and the owner to ensure communication is proactive instead of reactive, and you want it to be consistent. For messaging, when you think about the messaging, like the what in this tab, you really want to think through the level of detail that needs to be present when you're communicating, or need to be shared when you're communicating with each stakeholder group. And what messaging. So while it's detailed messaging, the messaging will not necessarily be the exact same for each stakeholder group. And so you want to think about what will be shared for each stakeholder group while still being transparent, right? So what you share with the teacher group may be different than what you share with a parent group, right? Like the what, but how you're doing it. So thinking about that. So you want to provide clarity while still being transparent. So can you go back really quick to communicate? So you will enter the strategy, then you'll think about the who, then you'll do the what, the when, the how, and the owner, and then you'll keep the status going. Okay, for tab 6. So tab 6, and you'll have time to think about this in breakout rooms. I know we're going a little quickly, but I want to make sure we stay on time. So for tab 6 is identifying work streams and owners. And so the purpose of this is to break down big goals into manageable parts. And so you want to clarify accountability and collaboration across all work streams when you're thinking about this. So you're going to identify work streams, the work streams that will be needed for the strategy. And then when you identify it, you list the owner of that work stream. Now, remember that each work stream will have a number of goals within them, but who is going to own that work stream for that particular part? So for communications, it may be your director or superintendent or director of communications. Who are the voices that need to be included? So consulted is a column, but who does the owner need to consult with? Who does the owner need to consult with before a decision is made? Who's going to help the owner do the work to meet the deadlines? And then it's optional to have an approver who has to approve it before it moves any further. So that is optional. Next slide. So we're going to give you about 8 minutes because we're a little off schedule. We're going to, instead of 10 minutes, we're going to give you 8 minutes to go into the communication tab and identify one strategy and fill in the who, what, when, how, and owner. And then go into the identify work streams and owners tab. And we're going to say identify, well, you can identify 3 to 5 key strategies. If you don't get to 5 or 3, it's fine. But identify work streams that are going to be needed. And you can keep the work streams that we have. You can delete them. You can add to them. But what are some work streams that you definitely know you're going to need for your particular strategy? Any questions? Okay, we're going to come back at 9:55. Okay, team, welcome back. So we'd love to hear from each district. Please let us know if we were one strategy that you listed for the communication tab, who, what, when, how, and the owners and next steps. And then share about 2 work streams that you stamped for your work streams tab.
Okay, so we didn't get that much done. On the communicate, we put principles, and we wrote a preview with principles that the district is rebooting the PLC norms to ensure teacher planning time is protected share the new PLC protocols to provide academic support, while also helping to reduce time teachers spend outside of the classroom planning. The district also wants to reduce, eliminate interruptions during PLC time. We put that as the what. The when, we started this back in September of 25. So is that the date you want us to put, or do you want us to put it for like when it's finalized, like May of 26?
When is when you plan to communicate?
Oh, okay, then September is good.
So we started communicating it this year. Is that
Mhm.
okay? Because I know this is
Sure.
not like the pilot and we're doing it, but we're gonna redo it
Sure.
this year.
Yes, ma'am. So it's when you start and then you can put September. Yes.
Okay, because I just wasn't sure if we waited till the whole thing was finished and then recommunicate it and put that date.
No, I think it's good. I
Or
think September.
Yeah.
Okay. And we didn't fill out the how or the next steps, but basically we did it during district professional development.
Got it.
On the other tab, we really kind of just got stuck on the communication piece. Because with the owner, the one that drives the work, we're the owner, the consultant, the helpers, and the approver. We need to be careful not just put the district on all of that. So we're trying to dissect how we want to break that down. So right now in the owners, we're looking at principals, AP, ICs, and teachers, and I think we need to break that down a little bit more. So
Mhm.
that was kind of where we got caught on that.
So our discussion was the driver is the person who's making sure it's happening on the campus. Is that your thinking on that? Or is the driver the person that's the big idea and we're making sure everybody understands? That's where we got stuck. And so for me, I was like, well, the principal drives it. They're on the campus, they're leading the PLCs, they're the ones doing it. But some other people on the team think it's the district because the district is the one that reorganized it, pushed it down, communicated it to the staff. So if you could help us clarify what you mean by driver, that would be very helpful in our discussion.
It could be both depending on the work stream, right? So if the communication, well, let's do school leadership. School leadership, if it's over like PLC, tell me your work streams. Did you list a work stream? That might be easier. Do you have a work stream that you're working from?
So we're starting on communication.
Okay, so if you have a communication and it's how the district plans to communicate this change, then it could be someone from the district that is owning that work and driving that work. And then the consultant or the helper could be somebody that they consult from the district to make sure that the communication is aligned, but then the helper could be the principal that's going to help ensure that it happens on the campus. It's really work stream dependent, and it's no right or wrong way to do it. You just want to ensure that if you are just thinking about the campus level, then sure, the principal can be the one owning that work stream and like people on the campus are driving it. But if it's coming from something that is coming from the top down, then typically your owner is someone in the district, and then it can go down to the campus level, if that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So glad that helped. I know we are short on time, so I would love to hear from Lytle. Still want to hear about your who, what, when, where, who, what, when, and how, and then a work stream that you identified.
So for us, we spent a little bit of time kind of on the logistics piece and less on the filling out. So we did fill out, of course, the differentiated PLC strategy, the campus, the grade level, the teachers, admin, academic coaches, teacher researchers. But what we are going to do is we're going to take the communication plan and we're going to go back to our theory of action where we already have the high leverage goals, short and long, and make sure it all ties to our communication plan. Mm-hmm. And I can't do that in 8 seconds, like while I'm like leading. So like we will go back and do that. What we would like to know is on the identifying work streams and owner, we see it as we want to have that component for each strategy. So it's on here and it's kind of a big bucket. And so if we are allowed, we want to either replicate that 3 times And then strategy 1, strategy 2, strategy 3, we come up with each of those components. So we didn't get anything filled out. It was more like, how do we make this work for us? Because just like Temple, it's supposed to work for us, of course. And that's what I'm hearing from, Dr. Smith too, is like, it's here for us so that it helps drive the next steps in the plan. So either we would like to do 3 tabs or just take that and just replicate it 3 times and then make each of those components work for the strategy. So we didn't get anything filled out. We were just like, because I think it'll be muddy for us if those plans are there and it's not separated out by strategy, and then it will be harder for us to track it. So that was just our
Absolutely.
thought. So that's what
Yeah.
we would like to do on that tab.
Absolutely. You can do it 3 tabs, or you can make another page, however, because this is your document. We don't want to say you have to use it this way. So, and it should be strategy dependent so that it doesn't get muddy. So you're exactly right. So you can do 3 different tabs or create the sheet and print it out 3 ways. Okay, I know we're over time. So the project plan and monitor, we were gonna push this to the next training anyway. This is just a high level for you to see. We won't go into it, but just know that this tab we will talk more about in our next training, actually putting it together. So this is what's coming up. DQIT coaching call October 23rd and the 4th. November 2nd, 7th is our next training, and it will be over performance management routines and implementation plan feedback. District coaching calls in November, the 20th and the 21st. In December, we have our December training on the 5th, and that will be over the final implementation plan and change management communication. And then December 19th, implementation plans are due. So we have time. This is not all due right now. You have time to work on this plan. As a team, begin drafting your implementation plans. The tabs that we did go over, start drafting them. Be prepared to discuss your implementation plan during October coaching call. So we just want to see your progression and how you've worked through some things, and see if we can answer some questions when we meet again in October or later this month. Alex has dropped the exit ticket. We thank you for an extra 3 minutes of your time on this beautiful Friday. And, reach out if you have any questions. So great to see y'all.
Good to see you all. Happy weekend.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sandra.
Bye.